So I want to spend some time today talking to you about my book and my work on black males. And one of the things that oftentimes happens is when I write on this topic or when I have spoken about this topic, folks always ask me the question, why black males? And I typically respond with a couple of different responses. Well, number one, I'm a black male, right? And so I think about some of the challenges and frustrations that I've seen along my journey. But it's also gotten more personal for me as a father of four. And of those four children, three of them are sons. And so I've watched and seen and witnessed some of the challenges that they have had to endure through schools. And this is with two parents who are highly educated. And so it oftentimes gives me pause why these young boys go through what they go through with parents who are advocates. What does it mean for those young boys who don't have the same kind of advocates for them? So that's another reason. I also do this work because I spend a lot of time in schools, visiting schools, talking to teachers, and I'm always intrigued by what happens when I walk into the office. And it oftentimes seems that who I frequently see sitting in the principal's office or waiting to see the principals are typically young boys, black boys. And I've oftentimes wondered why so many black boys are always in the office. Even in schools where black children are not in big numbers, black boys are always in the office. And then this is coupled with the fact that when I talk to schools or I'm asked to come out and do PD with schools, I'm oftentimes asked, can you help us with our black boys? We need help with our black boys. So this has been an ongoing theme, that something seems to be occurring with black boys. And so my desire to want to look at this is tied to those factors. But I also want to be clear before I get into the work on black boys that I by no means want to neglect or ignore other populations who also face challenges in our schools. And to that end, I have to talk about some works that are tied to black girls, because much of what I am seeing in schools also afflicts black girls. And I want to make sure that you understand that there are a number of works that are growing that are putting the spotlight on black girls. My colleague and friend Venus Evans-Winter has looked at black girls with her work on teaching black girls, which I think is important work to be mindful of. Also, Barbara Smith has done work on black girls. And there's a new book by Pat Lark that will be coming out later on this year where she also examines the challenges that black girls face. So please understand that I'm aware of those realities as well. The other question I frequently get is, what about other boys of color? Don't they face similar challenges? And to that, I would agree, yes, they do. And again, I'm mindful of the work by folks such as Gil Conscious, who has looked at the experiences of Latino males, as well as looking at the challenges of other males of color that Conscious has looked at. And my friend and colleague Pedro Noguera has also looked at this work with regard to Latino males, black males, and other Southeast Asian males as well. So I want to be mindful that I'm aware of the realities affecting other populations, and by no means by my focusing on black males does that somehow suggest that other populations are not experiencing difficulties. But I do want to be very intentional, and I try to be very intentional, that there's a reason why a spotlight needs to be placed on black males. Because when you look at a litany of data, it paints a very troubling and disturbing picture, and there's no two ways around it. And I think it's okay for us to be very unapologetic and to focus on a population that seems to be quite on the margins, not just in schools, but also in the wider society. And so part of what I would also say is when we say why focus on black boys, because there's a gross disparity in particular types of outcomes that we have to pay attention to. And we see these disparities taking place in issues such as employment, overall lifetime earnings, school graduation, college completion, college enrollment, and there's this vicious cycle that continues to affect this group in ways that I think that need to be paid attention to. And then there's also this way in which we see this disadvantage being played out that has an intergenerational effect where it seems to be impacting young boys in ways that it's not affecting young girls. And I want to talk about that for a second if I can. I have a group of doctoral students who have worked with me on this topic for the last 6 or 7 years through the Black Male Institute. And one of the things we looked at, for example, is family structures. And so there's data that has come out that's not new, but it's looked at children born in single-family households. And of course, this is not new data. It's been this way for some time, but it looked at the fact that black children, more so than any other group of students, are likely to be raised in single-parent households. So what's the takeaway from that? That alone does not suggest anything, because I believe it's not about family composition that matters in terms of outcomes, more disposition that matters. But what's intriguing to note, if you look at black children who grow up in single-parent households, there are some things that happen with black boys that don't happen with black girls. Case in point would be the following. So when you look at some of the research by Jacob and Cobb Clark, they've looked at the fact that when looking at black boys and black girls growing up in single-parent households, it reduces college attendance for boys but not for girls. Girls go to college at the same rates whether it's a two-parent household or a one-parent household. And we've seen an increase in the number of black girls going to college over the last couple of years. I want to be clear about the fact that it still lags behind their Asian, white, and Latina counterparts, but it's still higher than black boys. And also what this research has found is that father absence in black homes increases juvenile delinquency amongst boys, but again, not among girls. I think that's a salient finding. It's telling us something that happens differently for young boys in these circumstances compared to girls. And also there is research that tells us that there is a significant amount of behavior increases for boys than girls under the same household. So in many ways, some might suggest there's this saying that happens in many black families that when you have single parent households that are oftentimes led by black women, that in some cases black women raise their daughters and love their sons. So there's something different that's going on where we're asking the question about what is happening with black boys in these circumstances.